Caves have always had a mysterious pull, drawing in those who crave adventure and the unknown. They promise hidden worlds, ancient secrets, and landscapes unlike anything seen on the surface. But as fascinating as they are, caves are also among the most dangerous places to explore. Darkness, claustrophobic tunnels, and the sheer unpredictability of what lies ahead can quickly turn a thrill into a nightmare. In April of 2008, in the rugged beauty of southern Poland, one man named Michał learned this the hardest way possible. And decades earlier, in the icy chill of a January morning in upstate New York, a group of young adventurers found themselves in a life-or-death battle when one of their own became trapped deep inside Knox Cave. Both stories highlight the thin line between wonder and disaster. Michał's last adventure in Poland. On April 7, 2008, 30-year-old Michał set out with excitement in his heart. He had called his mother earlier that day, as he often did, letting her know his plans. For years, Michał had built his identity around exploration and physical challenge. He was a seasoned mountaineer, someone who thrived on pushing his body and mind to the limits. But recently, his curiosity had taken him underground. Instead of summiting peaks, he had turned his attention to the caves of the Jura region. The Jura was as beautiful as it was treacherous. Rolling limestone hills, carved by millions of years of natural processes, created a landscape famous for its beauty and riddled with hidden chambers below the surface. Within Ojkał National Park, part of this Jura region, over 220 caves had been identified, though only a handful were accessible. Most were sealed off with bars to protect their fragile geological and paleontological treasures, and frankly, to keep inexperienced adventurers out. Michał knew this. He had read about it in forums and research papers, yet the forbidden nature of these caves seemed to make them even more appealing. He had studied maps, read guidebooks, and soaked up every piece of information he could find. But knowledge on paper is never the same as lived experience. That April morning, Michał packed his gear: helmet, gloves, flashlight, snacks. He felt prepared. What he didn't have, though, was the one thing experienced cavers insist on: a partner. Going alone into such caves, especially ones with infamous sections, is a gamble against nature itself. Michał was willing to take that risk. The cave Michał entered had a mouth about 8 feet wide, which at first seemed manageable. In fact, the opening was the most spacious part of the entire system, a deceptive beginning to what lay ahead. For the first 32 feet, the path felt adventurous, but safe. Michał walked, crouched, and eased himself forward, his light bouncing across damp limestone walls. His confidence remained high, but soon the walls began to close in. He transitioned from crouching to crawling on his hands and knees, each movement bringing him deeper into the narrowing passage. He was aiming for a section known as the Clamp. Cavers had written about it, warning that this downward-sloping tunnel twisted in such a way that entering it meant fully committing. Backing out was close to impossible without help. Still, Michał pressed on, perhaps telling himself he was prepared enough, that his mountaineering grit would carry him through. The deeper Michał went, the tighter the passage became. Jagged rock pressed against his arms and ribs. Air felt thinner, each breath more deliberate. When he reached the clamp, the situation escalated from difficult to desperate. The tunnel angled downward sharply, forcing him into an almost upside-down position. At first, he inched forward with effort. Each push moved him mere inches. Then suddenly, progress stopped altogether. Wedged between unforgiving rock, Michał realized retreat would be nearly impossible. Fear crept in, but he fought to stay calm. He tried removing anything that might be adding bulk. One by one, he stripped off gloves, helmet, even his flashlight, and pushed them behind him. Yet no matter how he wriggled, twisted, or exhaled to shrink his chest, he remained stuck. Upside down, his body began to work against him. Blood pooled in his head, creating immense pressure. His lungs, pressed by the weight of his own organs, struggled to expand. The very technique he had used to squeeze in, exhaling completely, had now pinned him deeper into the rock. He reached for his phone, hoping beyond hope for a signal, but caves do not forgive so easily. His call never connected. His cries for help echoed uselessly off stone walls, swallowed by the silence of the earth. Minutes dragged on like hours as panic set in. That evening, as hours passed with no word, Mihal's mother felt unease. Her son always checked in after an adventure. By nightfall, her worry grew unbearable. She drove to the park and spotted his car near the entrance. Relief mixed with dread. If the car was here, he hadn't left, which meant he was still somewhere inside. At 12:45 a.m., she called the police. Within hours, authorities and a specialized rescue group known as the Jura Group assembled. They brought dogs, headlamps, and tools. The search began in the still, cold darkness of early morning. By 4:30 a.m., 22 rescuers were on site. Their dogs quickly located the Soa cave high on a limestone slope. The rescuers crawled in, finding signs that someone had passed. Scuff marks, dropped gear. The further they went, the tighter the tunnels became. For the larger rescuers, progress was impossible. Only the slimmest could make their way through inch by inch, contorting under jagged rock. One described the process as like trying to crawl beneath a parked car. Eventually, they came across Mihal's belongings, scattered inside the passage. Helmet, gloves, headlamp, phone, and then his feet. Mihal's body was discovered wedged nearly upside down, unresponsive. His skin was cold, his legs stiff. Rescuers pricked his foot to check for reaction, but there was none. Time had already run out. Still, they worked tirelessly, chiseling rock and widening the tunnel for hours to free him. The grim task turned from rescue to recovery. By evening, nearly 14 hours after they began, Mihal's body was finally brought out of the cave. The cause of death was never officially confirmed. Hypothermia was possible, given the cave's constant chill. Positional asphyxia, the strain of being trapped upside down too long, was just as likely. Either way, the cave had claimed him. For his mother, the devastation was unimaginable. For the rescuers, it was a haunting reminder of nature's unforgiving grip. Mihal's story is one of determination, curiosity, and ultimately the tragic cost of risk taken alone. A different cave, a different trap. Now, rewind to January of 1970. This time, the location is Knox Cave in upstate New York. Snow blanketed the ground, the air crisp with winter chill. A group of 31 adventurers had gathered for a spelunking expedition, eager to tackle one of the cave's most notorious features, the gun barrel. The gun barrel was infamous among cavers. 18 inches wide, 60 feet long, shaped like a keyhole. To make it through, explorers had to lie flat on their stomachs and wriggle, inch by inch, in complete darkness. For experienced spelunkers, it was a test of endurance and willpower. For newcomers, it was an initiation of fear. Among the group was 14-year-old Peter Vians. Young, determined, and eager to prove himself, Peter wanted to face the gun barrel despite warnings from others not to push too hard. One by one, members of the group entered the passage. Some advanced with practiced ease, others hesitated, nerves jangling in the claustrophobic squeeze. Peter waited, then finally pushed himself inside. The darkness pressed down as much as the stone walls. Every scrape of clothing against rock echoed in the silence. The tunnel was even tighter than he had imagined, but he managed to worm his way forward, heart pounding with both fear and pride. After reaching the wild section beyond, the group spent about an hour exploring, but eventually it was time to turn back. The challenge with the gun barrel was that returning was harder than going in. The smooth surfaces that had eased progress on the way in gave way to jagged edges on the way out. Peter, having been last in, now decided to be first on the way back. As Peter crawled forward, exhaustion slowed him. His clothes caught on sharp edges. Just 8 feet from the exit, disaster struck. His knee slipped into a narrow crevice in the tunnel floor. He pulled, twisted, pushed, but the rock held him fast. The more he struggled, the deeper it seemed to lock him in. Panic rippled through the group behind him as they realized he was stuck, and worse, his body blocked the only path forward or backward. No one could pass him. Everyone was trapped. Attempts to free him only brought pain. Each pull made Peter cry out. As hours dragged on, the cave's freezing air stole body heat. The risk of hypothermia became dangerously real. Above ground, those who hadn't gone into the passage grew worried. Hours had passed with no sign of the group. Finally, one ventured inside and discovered the truth. Peter was stuck, with everyone trapped behind him. Authorities were called immediately. Rescue teams arrived, but the tunnel's 18-inch width made their job nearly impossible. Forcing him free risked breaking his leg. Each failed attempt stretched into more agonizing hours. The cold gnawed at everyone. Peter, exhausted and frightened, began hallucinating. At one point, he screamed about a snake biting him, though there was none, his mind unraveling under fear and deprivation. By 8:30 p.m., a full day had passed. Rescuers devised a last-ditch plan. They sent down a thermos of soapy water, instructing those inside to pour it around Peter's trapped knee. At the same time, a rope was tied to his arm. Coordinating carefully, they pulled gently on the rope while shifting his body in the cramped tunnel. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, his knee began to move. With one last tug, it popped free. Relief swept through the cave. Carefully, painstakingly, Peter was guided out, inch by inch, until finally he emerged. Exhausted, bruised, and suffering from fractures and hypothermia, Peter was rushed to the hospital. He survived, but the memory of that day would forever shape his view of adventure and risk. Two stories, worlds apart, yet connected by the same theme: how quickly adventure in a cave can turn into catastrophe. Michal, alone and unprepared for the unforgiving grip of stone, never returned. Peter, surrounded by friends and aided by rescuers, barely escaped with his life. Caves are beautiful, but they demand respect. They remind us that nature is indifferent to preparation, age, or determination. One wrong move, one underestimation, and the earth itself can become an unrelenting trap. These stories serve as chilling reminders of both the risks and resilience found underground. Michal's tragic end in Poland underscores the danger of going it alone. Peter's near-death experience in Knox Cave shows how teamwork and persistence can pull someone back from the brink. Exploration will always carry risks, but caution, preparation, and never underestimating nature are what separate adventure from disaster. If you found these real-life cave survival stories gripping and eye-opening, consider subscribing and joining the journey for more powerful, true stories that reveal the raw edge of human endurance and nature's challenges.